listeners, I am back from my international trip. And of course, I needed to call my dear friend, Sarah Stremming, to talk about all the things of my trip. And as we were talking, as we do, we were like, oh my gosh, this is a podcast episode. So welcome, Sarah, back to the show. Happy to have you here.
Yes. And we were going to record something else and we were having this conversation and we were like, wait, postpone that other thing. We have to talk about this thing.
Yes. And the other thing is so good. We're really excited.
It's coming. We're going to do that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to record that one. Just a little teaser. It is how to set up. It's going to be all the considerations about when you are recruiting helper people or helper dogs for your dog that is leash reactive. So it's an awesome episode. We're really excited. However, we felt this was really, really resonant because I just came back from Peru. And I was there for a variety of reasons. So I was there by myself because I wanted to push myself out of my comfort zone. I was saying that I felt like I had a lot of COVID dust on my back. And I'm the type of woman that is always seeking and learning and trying to expand myself, both emotionally, spiritually. And I was feeling really scared, feeling really like I got to stay in my house and be safe. And I finally, this year has been really hard with the loss of my dog. And I was like, gosh, I really need to just do something to give myself the biggest shake off possible to sort of recalibrate and, feel a little bit nervous and push myself out of my comfort zone. So I left and went to Peru for 10 days and I was able to push myself out of my comfort zone in a variety of different ways. And I won't go into all the details of what I did there. But one of the biggest lessons that I learned for myself, but also observed in the dogs there, was to just this beautiful word of allow. Just allow whatever it is, whatever behavior, whatever emotion, whatever experience, for it to come up and for you to be with it. And so I experienced that in a variety of different ways, visiting Machu Picchu, going to Sacred Valley. But I really found it fascinating to see the street dogs of Peru and watch them be able to do what they want to do. Just so much organic expression. They were quote unquote allowed to be dogs. And it was fascinating because I was listening to Mike Shikashio's episode with Sindor Pagal about street dogs in India. And that was so cool to be listening to her. Shout out to her. That episode is amazing. Her research is amazing. It was so cool to be listening to her and then experiencing street dogs of Peru. Very different. Just as a side note, a lot of the street dogs in Peru, a lot of them do live in the house at night. So a lot of them I thought were in really great shape. Like people that don't even know dogs that I met were like, wow, these dogs look well. They're not thin. They don't have conjunctivitis. They look healthy.
They look all the pictures you sent me, they look really healthy.
Healthy.
Actually, and we're going to get into their behavioral health, but they medically look very healthy. They're all in good condition. Their haircut looks great. And a lot of them, they're not all short-coated dogs, but there's no matting. They look beautiful. Their eyes are clear. Mm-hmm. And then just this beautiful look of balance in their faces too.
Yeah.
I want to be one of those dogs.
Totally. And so when I stayed in this little town, Pisac, in the Sacred Valley, I was fortunate enough that at my retreat center, it's not even a center, it's like a few Airbnbs or whatever. There were 3 female dogs that stayed where I was. And then there were 3 female dogs in the house below. And they actually lived in the house, right? They're not street dogs. but there were so many other dogs around this space. And the barking that went on at night, like, wow. Like, and nobody, like I would bring it up to people. I'd be like, wow, there's so much barking happening at night. And they're like, oh, I don't hear it. Like it's just like, that would never fly here.
I just said to somebody the other day, like, dogs bark. This is a noise they make. And it sounds like you don't have a barking problem. It sounds like you have a dog.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was funny because my nervous system was like, oh my gosh, like enough with the barking. Like, what are they barking at?
Totally.
And I also made up a story like, okay, some of those barks sound stressed. So like, and you're really persistent about the barking. So, and it got me thinking like, how much behavior do we allow? And how much behavior when do we step in and assist? And it reminds me a lot of, I was steeped in Pema Chodron, When Things Fall Apart, that book on this trip. Amazing read. I barely read. Please read it if you haven't. And it was like that. Like there is always pleasure. There is always pain. There is always good. There is always bad. We have to allow for both. Right. And so what is that balance of not only allowing for our own emotion, our own behavior to come up, but how can we gift that allowance to our dogs? Right. Like I was saying, these dogs are just like out and about being who they are. They have full permission to drop in and be a dog. They can bark throughout the night if they want. They can defend their territory. They can, like, there was one point, I think this is so funny, and I need to post this video on Instagram because I hadn't seen a lot of dogs together. Like I had just seen single dogs or maybe 2 dogs. And then I finally saw 5 dogs together. And I was like, got my camera on, videoing. I'm running after them. Like, I was like, oh, I want to see like an actual group of dogs. And Sarah, so much beautiful communication. And then it escalated. And I think I had told you this, that I almost stepped in.
Right. So
I almost stepped in and was like, hey, like trying to interrupt the escalation as if like, and thank goodness I stopped myself. I was like, Marissa, sweetie, they don't need you. They live here. They're communicating. Allow the discomfort of you witnessing them having an argument. Allow this communication to happen. Allow them to be dogs. Like they don't need you. And so I'm grappling with this idea of allowing, right? Not allowing to compromise welfare, right? So where is that fine line? And you and I can talk about what that may look like. But yeah, so I brought this topic to Sarah and you talked a lot about Rhea, right? And so I'd love for you to share with our listeners, like how you've allowed her to be an Icelandic sheepdog.
Yeah, who she is. And just I think the broader concept of these dogs that you saw in Peru were so kind of behaviorally balanced.
4 steps to behavioral wellness.
They're just like laying next to, exactly, because they're what is the 4 steps? The 4 steps is fully allowing for dogness.
Mm-hmm.
Saying this is a dog and I allow my dog to express dogness. Which is another kind of way to define enrichment, right? It's just its expression of dogness is what enrichment is for dogs. And so for me, yes, like allowing the full range of dogness is so important and healthy for them. And then here's what we do is we put them on a leash. Mm-hmm. We put them in a house without access to outside. Or if they do have access to outside, it's a small space that is confined, that has triggers and other stuff going on outside that fence. We put them in really contrived scenarios with their own kind. And usually the only time they see their own kind are these really contrived scenarios, like a dog park, a dog daycare, puppy kindergarten, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't allow for the full expression of dogness, because here's what dogs do. They bark, they dig, they chew, they pee on vertical surfaces, they, they scavenge. Think of like so many, I'm putting this in quotations, behavior problems that are just expression of dogness.
Mm-hmm.
Counter surfing. When I get asked, how do I make the dog stop getting stuff off the counter? I don't know about you, Marissa, but I say, well, talk to me about your floor plan, because we need a barrier, right? Because it's as bad as saying, how do I make the dog stop, how do I make his toenails stop growing? Like, I hate cutting.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're not going to. That's part of who the dog is in his body. And so having Rhea, I feel really fortunate that she came into my life when she did, for a lot of reasons. But
like you as a trainer, like where you were?
Yeah. Basically, I feel lucky that I was ready for her as a trainer, because I see a lot of folks with this breed, because now I have like a whole new community of people who have this breed. And I see a lot of folks struggling with them, especially when they're younger. And I feel really fortunate that, like, she and Iggy, for instance, were not swapped in my life, because I wouldn't have had this kind of, Iggy, for reference, is almost 14 years old. And so the trainer I was 14 years ago was really into controlling access to resources, really into really just manipulating everything about them. And that's something that I learned from the sport world. And it's something that's still really prevalent in the sport world as well as everywhere else. And I just feel really lucky that that I was able to allow the full range of what it means to be an Icelandic sheepdog and still shape a really nice dog to be my companion and my friend. But I feel lucky, one, because I haven't struggled with this dog at all. She's been, I mean, we've talked about what a breath of fresh air, like, she is, honestly, compared to my 3 border collies that came before her, a piece of cake, like the best cake, the best cake that you could eat. But also I feel fortunate, because what a shame it would have been to try to make her something else, because she's so fun and interesting and cool just being what she is and who she is. So examples of who she is and what she is that people might struggle with, that I have allowed for and been able to then nurture into maybe something that she and I can be together that's easy for me, is that this breed is really known for being vocal. They bark a lot. And it's the number one question that people are asking over in, there's like a Facebook group called So You Want an Icelandic Sheepdog, and like people who are seeking the breed go and ask questions over there. And the number one question is, I've heard they bark a lot, can you train them not to? Like, it's always, but can you teach them not to? And everybody's like, of course you can teach them not to. And it's really interesting to me, because I'm like, no, good luck. No, you can't. Also, don't. Instead, like, open your heart to the fact that this breed has a lot to say and be okay with it. So I was telling Marissa before we got on the call, I was dropping my car off to have some work done. And I had Rhea, so I got her out of the car in the big enclosed garage at the dealership. And Rhea just sings out this like Icelandic greeting to everyone in the garage. and it was so loud because it's an enclosed garage. And what a shame if I had like popped her collar and told her to shut up.
Yeah.
Right. Instead, I'm just like, well, yeah, good morning, Rhea. And like, it's a mindset shift of saying, this is okay that you use your voice to communicate. And when you're using your voice to communicate that you need something, honestly, I'm going to try to meet your needs.
Yeah.
If you use your voice to alert to something, I am really interested in acknowledging what you're alerting me to, doing something about it if necessary. And then so much of her vocalization is just joy. So much of her vocalization is just, I'm so thrilled right now that I'm running in the woods with my brothers, right? Like that's how she expresses so much of her happiness.
Yeah.
That like, who would I be to make her stop? And so, yeah, if it bothers you, maybe this isn't the kind of dog for you. But also, I don't know anybody who's not bothered by barking. Like, we don't like barking.
Yeah.
We humans, this is a point of disagreement we have with dogs. Like, we didn't talk about this before we all got together, that like they like to bark and that we really have a distaste for barking. But how cool that these people in Peru are like, oh, we don't hear that. We don't hear them barking all night because they're used to it and they sleep through it. Whereas we, like, you are like, oh, that one sounds a little distressed. I need to help. Oh, that one is going on a little bit too long. Maybe I need to intervene, right? Like, this is cultural and this is a mindset shift. And I'm just, barking in particular is a language, and it happens for so many different reasons that I think we are wisest to think about what the function is. And sometimes the function is literally just that the dog has a feeling and it comes out as a bark.
Yeah.
And if that's the function, like, you can squash their feelings, but I don't think you should.
Yeah. Barking is like a metaphor for, and actually Pema talks about it in her book. Barking is like a metaphor for fill in the blank annoying behavior / emotion that comes up, right? Whether it's we're witnessing that or we're having it in ourselves, right? Like my brain or my mind barks at me often.
Oh my God.
My emotions.
When mine does, and it's really annoying, like 3 a.m. Something wakes me up at 3 a.m. and then I have like a spiral. And it's hard for me to access it at that time. But when you're having a feeling, the only way, as we learned from our friend, Emily Nagoski.
Yeah. Our bestie.
Our girl, Emily, is you got to go through it. It's a tunnel. You got to go all the way through. Right. And what I want to do is like, stop it, shut it up, stop.
Yeah. Suppress.
Collar on that feeling.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do. When in reality, it's got to be like, hey, anxiety, I see you're here. Okay.
What might you need?
I'm going to sit in that feeling, see what you need from me, and go through to the other side of it. And oh man, this is so hard for us.
Yeah, it is really hard. And I do want to, I was thinking about this before we were recording. I do want to say that like some of these things, whether it's observing dog behavior, whether it's observing emotions within ourselves or emotions or behavior of others, some of those things do trigger a significant traumatic response, right? So like the idea of like sitting and taking a look at it and getting curious and hanging out with it could be really scary for other people. So I know Sarah and I want to be really sensitive to that. I know Sarah's really
sure. And
sensitive
like,
too.
if I'm actually having a PTSD flashback, you think I'm sitting with it, Marissa?
Yeah. Like, no. So we want to be really clear
right?
about, you know, that we understand that is a continuum of responses to your environment, whether that's your internal environment or your external environment. But yeah,
it's more like the nagging, the feelings that are more like barking that are not a problem, but they're irritating.
Mm-hmm. That
we've kind of learned aren't okay to feel. It's kind of that stuff.
Yeah.
And so what I think is interesting is that, like, I'm in the business, you're in the business of behavior change.
Mm-hmm.
And the longer I'm in this work with dogs, the more I want to show people how to give their dog full allowance of dogness and what that will do for the dog's behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's what we do to them. I said it. We put them on a short leash. We don't let them, like, their nature is to be off leash, moving their body freely. We don't do that. We put them on a short leash. We put them in a backyard. Like, they're lucky if they get a backyard, right? Mm-hmm. In fact, they're lucky if they get leash walked, right? Like, so many dogs.
Seriously.
Right? So their nature is to scavenge for a variety of foods, and we feed them a cereal in a bowl twice a day. Their nature is to use their full vocal range, and some of them use it more than others, depending on their origin, depending on their history, their learning history, and their genetics, right? Mm-hmm. And we spray them in the face with water. We put bark collars on them. You know what also is not benign? Throwing food at them to make them stop. Like, we intervene when they're vocalizing. And they're just designed to be something other than what we make them be. And a lot of their maladaptive behaviors are because of that. Mm-hmm. So if we flip it to like a person example, a human example, I feel like humans' nature, and of course, I'm going to allow for humans being really diverse here, and humans being able to make homes in a lot of different places in a lot of different ways. But our nature really is to be in nature a whole lot more than we are. Mm-hmm. Our nature is to have community and connection to other people. And we are continually more and more isolated as a society, right? Because we have this fake community that comes through a screen. And we feel like that replaces real community, and it doesn't. And our nature is to sleep as long as our bodies want to let us sleep, and we have a noise that wakes us up instead, that's in one of those screens, right? And our nature is also to eat a variety of fresh food that come from the earth, and we're in way too big a rush for that. Okay, so we drink the protein shake instead, right? So we go against our nature a lot too. Mm-hmm. And here's what happens. And we know this, like, this is examined, this is researched. The fact of the matter is that when you take a human and you put them in a city environment, so you reduce the nature in their life, and it's a recipe, right? I am a middle-aged woman with 2 kids and a partner, and I sleep average 6 hours a night because I got to get up and hit the gym before I get the kids out to school, and then I go to my job all day, and then I come home and throw some food together as best as I can, but a lot of that's going to be from a box because it's cheap and easy. And, then I numb with a couple glasses of wine and I go to bed,
Netflix.
do it over, right? Numb with Netflix, I numb with whatever, and then I go to bed and I do it again. And I have questions about why I really need antidepressants and benzos in my life.
Yeah.
Also, no shade to meds, because like better living through chemistry. Yeah. I'm all for it.
Yeah.
And then it comes back to dogs, because I'm certainly not an expert in human mental health. I'm a student of human mental health, right? Like, but we do the same stuff to dogs. And now we're like, why are all these dogs an anxious mess? Well, because you've totally ripped them out of their natural environment is why. And guess what? Same to you. And do you talk to dog trainers who don't agree with the following statement? The dogs keep getting worse. I've been doing this for X number of years. Why are the dogs getting worse?
Yep.
Because the people are also getting worse, because we go further and further from our nature every day. And when we do, so do they, because they are attached to us.
Yeah. And like further and further from our nature, I think an expression of that I resonate with deeply, that I read about and reflected about on this trip, was like, we as a human, like as especially Americans, we're desperately doing one of two things at all times. We're either trying to grip and hold on to positivity, like, I want that, I get that, I keep that, I get the bigger house, I get the better job, I get the dog that's quiet, right? The dog that's listening to me. I'm like striving for the better and the getting, or I am trying to avoid the negativity, the discomfort, the death that happens every day, the hardship, right? So I'm like running from discomfort, and I'm grasping, or, like desperately grasping for things that will fill me up and make me happy. And that behavior pattern that I am so intimately aware and involved in for 40 years, that is the suffering, right? Like it's the sheer suffering that, like, and it reminds me so much of dog training, right? It's like the person that you're saying in the Facebook group that's like, okay, I really want an Icelandic sheepdog, running and grasping towards like something that I want that's going to fill me up, but I want to avoid barking. Hey, this whole thing over here with barking, it's uncomfortable for me. I want to avoid it. And it's like, wow, like we do it every day.
Yeah. And when in reality, like, I want you to have what you want. Understand that, like, allowing is how you get there. Allowing, and then just actually doing the work that means accepting the uncomfortable truths and the uncomfortable things, and kind of adjusting accordingly. So like something's coming up for me that I was just conversing with a student, got a young dog, like a 9 or 10 month old dog, that student has worked really, really hard to try to produce an off-leash reliable dog. Dog's 10 months old, dog is not off-leash reliable, and kind of was, but prior to like 6 months, which is kind of common.
Yeah.
And shared a video of the dog just running off into the woods. Client gets kind of panicky, right, in her voice. This is like, I don't know what to do. I can't get I'm realizing that I have no control over this situation. I've tried to call the dog, she's not coming, right? And here comes me with the truth bomb. Like, I'm the biggest proponent of off-leash exercise on this planet, I'm pretty sure. And I said, looks like your dog can't be off-leash in that environment. Like, I'm not interested in you losing her. And I'm not interested in her chasing and harassing wildlife. And I'm not like for your future goals, as well as just for the wildlife deserves peace.
Yeah.
Right. So the student was like, oh, like, I hate this. Like, how long is this going to take? Like, this is so much work. And
Yeah.
what are relationships? It's so much
What
work.
are relationships? Sit with that for a second.
It's so much work.
So much work.
Right.
Shaping the behavior we want to see, we want to engage in. So much work.
And when it's a dog and it's like, here's the goal, here's the happiness I'm chasing. Me and this dog walking down a trail. There's no leash. I know I can call her if I need to. I know she's not just going to dart off and go hunting and leave me. That's the happiness that I'm chasing. But what I'm avoiding is that in the meantime, I got to rent sniff spots that are fully fenced so that this dog can get fulfilled. I have to really work on my working relationship and my engagement with this dog. I have to utilize a long line and maybe a no pull situation because the dog is really pulling on me on the long line. It's really uncomfortable. And, you know, the discomfort that if you avoid it, you won't get to the happiness. Like, you want that happy picture, you got to face these uncomfortable truths to get to that happy picture.
Yeah. And then
it's a pendulum swinging. Like, my dogs,
totally.
You've gone on a hike with me with my dogs. Like, my dogs are very reliable off leash, but also you saw me constantly making judgment calls about when to reinforce them, when to cue them, when to let them go. It is it's mental gymnastics.
Totally. It's amazing. And then you stayed present with me. I'm like, how is this possible?
That's interesting to me too. And I think it's just that I am so fluent in off-leash management.
Yeah.
And I need to give my clients more grace on the fact that they're not. And they don't I forget, like, I don't necessarily realize everything I'm doing all the time.
Ooh, off-leash management is a podcast episode, just FYI. Like, your mental gymnastics, I would love to hear that one.
And then here's the thing is I made this mistake of telling everybody that I'm not training them on walks, because what I don't want them to do is make the dog heel and sit and do downstays. But of course I'm training them. The whole time I'm training them.
Yeah.
It's just that I'm not telling them what to do. I am training them, but I'm not telling them what to do.
You aren't telling them what to do.
And so there are so many people for whom just putting those dogs on leashes is going to be what allows them to go on the hike they want to go on, because they don't want to do the mental gymnastics that I'm doing. For me, holding leashes is really uncomfortable. It's hard for my body to hike as it is. And then if I'm holding something that pulls me off balance on occasion, it's really hard. And I literally think that's it, Marissa. I think it's the discomfort in my body that has pushed me to be so good at off-leash reliability.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm like, coming to terms with a lot of those truths right now. And so what's interesting is that we are all always running to that happiness and avoiding the discomfort, whereas there's always both. And the discomfort of this, like, me walking down the trail with my 3 dogs off leash, is the joy, is the picture, is what everybody wants. The discomfort is the mental gymnastics I'm doing to make sure that they're safe that whole time.
Yeah, I think it's important that you're bringing up both, because I was going to put a pin in what you said earlier, that, like, and I'm saying this out loud for all of our pet parents, right? Like, you can have a goal, but if you get really grippy on that goal, that goal is then going to alleviate you from fill in the blank emotion, right? It's going to alleviate you from discomfort. It's going to alleviate you from yelling at the dog. It's going to alleviate you from blaming yourself. Like, you're kidding yourself. You cannot have pleasure without pain. You cannot have good without bad. And so even though like you just gave a great example. There is still challenge within joy that you're experiencing, right? Like you worked really hard to get to this joyful place where you can have your dogs off leash. And I've seen it. It's really, really seamless and beautiful. And yet like there is still work and tenacity and judgment and awareness that goes into that. So it's, you know, it's like we hear all the time from, I mean, I hear this all the time from pet parents where it's like, well, I just don't want to have to worry about it. And it's almost like, oh, wow, but welcome to life.
Like, where's the set it and forget it?
Yeah, like there is no,
like, where's the button that I push and then this never happens again?
Totally. And for someone like me, who's a planner type A, I have a lot of empathy for those people because I'm like, oh yeah, I've been living my whole life like that. Like I am really skillfully and I can craft like my environment so I don't have to feel anything. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's not true. It's not true. Right. So it's this, you know, circling back to this initial topic of allowing, it's like, reminds me of a part of the podcast episode I did with Christy Caton about like all of it belongs. It's sort of like, we've got to allow for both all the good things that we want in our lives and allow for all the hardship. And I have to say, this has been the hardest year of my life, I will say, especially because I lost Sully. And I'm very fortunate that that was the first real significant, very close to me death in my life. Like I'm really fortunate at my age that like that happened to me this year. Right. And this year was filled with a lot of other different types of hardship. And I have to say that this has been the best year of my life because I'm cracking open to new ways of being and thinking because of the hardship. So it's like, there is opportunity within your dog engaging in a behavior and you feeling an emotion that you don't want to feel, like, wow, like maybe get curious with that, right? Like there's such a growth opportunity for all of us to allow for more discomfort in our lives so that we're not trying to desperately run from it because it's just, we're literally never going to outrun it. I promise you.
You're never going to outrun it. And, has anybody ever asked you, like, if you've presented kind of a goal to a coach, have you ever had a coach then say, okay, so picture it, you've got it, you've got that goal. Now what?
Yeah, totally. My coach says that to me all the time because I'm
the
such
worst.
a 3. Yeah.
I hate it. Right.
We're both you and I are 3 on the Enneagram.
Both Enneagram 3. It's ridiculous.
It's a curse.
so bad. The worst. I still can't. There's one goal that I share with my agility coach that like, she was like, okay, so picture it, like it's happened. Like what do you have then in that moment? What do you have now? And then what do you do next? And I literally couldn't answer her. Like, I was like, like, how dare you ask me that? Like,
yeah. Well, and I almost would like, it would be so interesting if you said, okay, so imagine that goal. Yeah. What do you have now that you've achieved that goal? Where do you have that currently? Like, that's the question. Like,
where is it already?
Because I bet it's somewhere. It might not be in the place that you want it to be, or it might not look the way you want it to be, but I bet it's somewhere. That would be an interesting question. I'm going to add that to my client list.
That is hard. And that's a tough question. And so then when people say, you know, I just want this dog to walk with me off leash easily, it's the question then is, okay, what do you have when you have that? Mm-hmm. And then, wow, the other question, where do you have that already?
With your dog. Yeah. Just because it's like, it's not to negate the goal, right? And like, we can work towards that, right? It's not, there isn't, I want listeners to really be very clear that like, this is not about not having goals, especially with Sarah.
No, I'm like big
Sarah goals. And I being 3s.
Okay, like goals, like, yeah. Uh-huh.
We're goal women, but, it's more about like being really curious about the goal and not being so attached to it and allowing for the process around the goal and allowing for the curiosity to be like, is truly, do I want that? Like, is that truly what I want? Do I need that? Can I allow my dog to engage in this particular behavior or not? Can I allow myself to feel a level of discomfort, right? Just allowing for all of it.
And, it comes back to, I think people are like, okay, cool. But like, I can't let the dog do fill in the blank.
Yeah. Like bite the kid.
I can't let my dog bite my kid.
Yeah.
I can't let my dog bark and lunge at everything on leash. Mm-hmm. I can't, et cetera, et cetera. So it still circles back though to then where are we going to allow more expression of dogness for them? Because it can't just be about not allowing. It can't just be about stopping. It has to be about where can we allow for better expression of dogness. I'm all about, because one of the things that I do in leash reactivity that I don't think is done commonly in R+ circles is I do go through a process with the owner and the dog where I would like the dog to be able to be asked to come down from a reaction. I would like the handler and the dog to have the skill of the handler saying to the dog, hey, make a different choice right now. The dog then choosing that different choice. And my God, there's so much that goes into that, right? Like, because when I meet them, they're not making any choices. When they meet them, they're just having a response.
Yeah.
It feels very reflexive and isn't a lot under their control. So putting it under their control is the first thing we got to do. Their control, not yours.
Yeah.
And then asking them to access that control is a part of my work that is honestly the hard part, because it requires all this other allowing of dogness to be present, because you don't get to ask them to do stuff like that for you if you don't, for the most part, allow them to fully express themselves and be who they are. And again, it's that balance of both and. That I'm gonna let this dog really get in nature and be a dog as much as possible. I feed this dog's body as best as I can, and I'm gonna have the dog really experience wellness on an extreme level, so that in the moment when I'm walking him down the street and he gets pissed about the happy doodle puppy across the street, I can say to him, hey, we're not going to be pissed about that. We're going to walk past it. And that he can say, okay, you're right. That's a better idea. And then I can reward that. I think that I see reactivity programs that are all of that are all, hey, you need to make a different choice. And it's usually or else. There's usually an or else attached to that with the type of training I'm talking about. Or I see a lot of training that's very much like, I'm just going to protect you from your feelings for the rest of your life. And for me, I don't think either of those are real life. So we always land on reactivity, because I think people really, I think it's a huge struggle. And did you see any dogs in Peru that you would label reactive?
No.
And isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Well, none of them were on a leash too, right? So it's like,
and so therefore it begs the question, does reactivity exist without confinement?
Yeah. It's like,
does reactivity exist without leashes and fences?
Well, and we always go back to reactivity, right? Because I'm also thinking about like, what happens to me? Like, you watched a video of me I was training a dog and he heard other dogs and I had a reaction to it instead of just like allowing him to hear the other. I was so worried about like trying to prevent him from responding to that other dog,
from his feelings,
protecting him from his feelings. I was so worried about that. And you were like, girl, he didn't fucking care. You were like, girl,
that's what I said. I'm sure of it.
Yeah. You were like, he didn't fucking care. Like, okay, you cared. Right. And so there's this, when I think about allowing, I appreciate you bringing up the fact that like, yeah, we're not saying like, just do setups and allow your dog to,
Absolutely
react.
not. No,
or like walk down the street and allow your dog to become stressed. Or like, last night we had our neighbor's dog over, Nelson, and oh my gosh, talk about deprived welfare. But anytime Scott moved around the house, charging, barking, and he has a relationship with Scott, but like when he gets settled, it's like way too much for him. And I was like, okay, I need to remove him from, like, I'm not going to sit here and allow this to happen. Not only is it like not okay for Scott to have a 20-pound dog charging him.
Cause it's not discomfort. And it's not about, okay, I'm going to allow you to just keep expressing your discomfort because you're uncomfortable. No, it's, I'm going to help you.
Yeah. Like, okay, let's see. And, it was really funny. I was watching his 10-year-old mom. Right. And she was like, well, let's just see if he can do it. I was like, oh, this is so funny. She just wants to allow him to like, see if he can settle. Right. Like she has more capacity for this behavior than I do. And he couldn't. And I was like, okay, we're leaving. We're going to take this whole party over to your house. Again, I was watching her. And so like this environment is not right. So we're not saying don't step in and help and assist, because to me, that is like, if you're not doing that for your dog, then that becomes a welfare concern. Go ahead.
But what it is that here's what we want to do though. We want to put him on a leash and get our treat pouch and get our clicker and change it. And that is different from saying, I'm going to support you, which means I'm going to change something in this environment to help you express your dogness in a different way.
Yeah. Like I'm going to take you out of this situation to support you. Right. Because clearly you were allowed to make choices. You made them and you're spiraling, right? Like it would be like, you have a friend and they're having a hard time and you're just like, go ahead, just fill the space with all these really toxic thoughts. And I'm just going to sort of watch you. It's like, no, I'm going to say like, okay, hey, what do you need right now? How can I help you? Let's take a deep breath, right? Like I'm going to assist in a way to help you get under threshold, right? This dog was totally over threshold. So we're not saying to just like abandon ship, but it is really, I feel like ways in which we can allow for reactivity, for example, would be like, oh, okay. Like I underestimated that stimulus. I thought it was far enough away, but when it wasn't, okay. I allowed for my dog to bark. We created some space. We both take a breath, right? Like to me, instead of like spiraling and being like, I suck as a trainer, or I can't believe my dog did that, or I thought we were past this, or whatever. It's just like, okay, there's the thing. There's a mistake. If we even want to call it a mistake, I don't even know if I want to label it that. There's a thing that happened. I allowed it to happen. What's my next step? I promise you're going to make better decisions for you and your dog if you come from that place where you allow that the dog will react. Like the dog will have a response because we're in living life.
It's about allowing for the full range of
full range of
emotions and behavior. And what I see so often it's not just in the dog owners that we work with, it's in our colleagues, it's in the texts. I mean, when I read some training protocols, sometimes I'm like, whoa, what Stepford do you live in? This isn't real. I mean, I don't know if that happens to you, but like sometimes you'll hear a presentation and you're going, okay, cool. I don't see how this is reality.
Yeah.
Right. With my clients and my dogs in real life. Right. And so it's about allowing for the full range of dog behavior. And I do find, if you don't have like a ton of experience with a lot of dogs in maybe not ideal circumstances, and the two that are coming to mind would be like your background is in sheltering.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of dogs in a really not ideal circumstance for dogs. So you've seen the full gamut, right? The good, the bad, the ugly.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, I think you're more comfortable with, a full range of dog behavior. I worked in several different dog daycares, some of them that ranged really from like top notch down to like, oh my God, I can't believe that I was under that roof, right? So like the full range, and just getting really, really comfortable with the way dogs talk to each other, the way that dogs express feelings, the way that dogs do stuff. And when you put them in a not ideal circumstance, you're going to see those things come out bigger. And if you maybe don't have that experience, and maybe most of your actual hands-on experience is with your own dogs or your really specific clientele, it's important, I think, to remember that there's a bigger range, there's a bigger repertoire available here to this species than maybe the one that you're seeing. Mm-hmm. So like when you saw the group of dogs in Peru and things started to get a little bit dicey and you wanted to intervene, and you stopped yourself and click treat for that, because that's hard. Sometimes it just comes out of my mouth. Like if I were there, I probably would have been like, hey, knock it off. Because I've lived with large groups of dogs for so long, and I've worked with large groups of dogs for so long that I just probably would have just come out of my mouth. And they would have been like, you're cute, we don't care.
Seriously, right? like real cute.
Who are you to say anything to us? Like, we had a life way before you got here.
Literally.
And so it's not about dogs are going to pee on your walls and eat your couch and bark all night, and you just have to allow it. That is so far from what we're saying. But it is about saying, how can I allow for full expression of dogness in as much capacity as possible? Because I recognize that this is a captive animal in not an ideal environment for him.
Mm-hmm. And how can I allow that for myself? Right? Like, how can I allow?
Because if you aren't also, like, if you are sleep deprived and nutrient deprived and exercise deprived and communication deprived, you can't give that to them.
Yeah, because it's interesting to hear you say, like, yes, I do have worked in shelters for 14 years and like seen a lot of dogs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be really interesting to see, maybe I'll report back, my relationship to discomfort as I shift it, since I've been running from it for so long, trying to organize everything to be safe and comfortable. I'm curious to see what my relationship will be like with discomfort when I observe it in another dog. Like, will I have a little bit more allowance, a little bit more capacity? Like, instead of trying to rush and fix.
Yeah.
And again, like we keep saying, it's not like, I don't ever want to be totally okay with watching an animal suffer, or if their welfare is being compromised. That's not what I'm saying. But is there an awareness that could happen? Or is there an awareness that I might observe it and I take a breath, or I pause before I react, right? Like I'm not just rushing and fixing for the sake of running from discomfort. And so,
because it's when you get in there and you fix a problem for the dog, whose discomfort are you relieving actually?
yeah, like
Your own.
it's probably my, like the function of my behavior
The function
is
of
my own.
to feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is a big ask. And so if folks are like, what the heck was this podcast about? Sure. Like it took me 40 years to get to this place. It took me like traveling across the country and literally seeking out discomfort for me to go like, oh, wow, this isn't that bad. Like taking a look at discomfort isn't really that bad. I mean, at some points it was really bad, but, you know, I don't know.
And we're not saying that everything is like always fine. Like this is not us being Pollyanna at all. This is like saying, yeah, things suck a lot of the time. And it's important to acknowledge and allow that.
Yeah.
And if your dog barking is making you upset and uncomfortable, you can do something about that. But I think that the challenge is to reframe it into that's an expression of dogness. And I love dogs and I love this dog. And oh, look, it's over now. They stopped.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like it's like, you know, when Rhea is barking out of joy because when she first starts out on the trail, she barks about it because she's so excited that we're going on a walk. And I was on the phone once, I was going hiking with a friend who was like, I could not handle this dog. I could not live with this dog.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, you know, you could actually. Like, it's not a big deal. She's joyous and excited right now. She's not like this all the time.
Yeah.
And I think she's cute. So it's fine. Like, I've reframed it into how funny that's all of these other dogs are quiet. And she is just so loud about her joy.
Yeah.
And it's so innate for her to be loud about her joy. And it's
and what is it about observing someone
what
that
is
is
it about
so joyful?
What is it about observing someone who's being loud about their joy that is uncomfortable for you?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what other moments are uncomfortable for you?
Yeah. Yeah.
When people are loud about their joy.
Yeah.
Specifically, maybe more marginalized people being loud about their joy really bothers a lot of people. And I think that's wow, like that's a deeper question.
Yeah, it is a deeper question. Yeah. But I like when you were just saying, yeah, if your dog is barking and you can address it, this is how I want it to be. It's almost like you can address it with antecedent arrangement. You can address it with training techniques. You can address it through enrichment, right? Like, but please don't let off the list. Like I'm envisioning like a pie chart, right? It's like enrichment, physical exercise, all the things that we do as trainers. But a big piece of that damn pie is how you're showing up and whether or not you're allowing for this behavior to happen and whether or not like you're paying attention to your reaction to this whole thing. Because if we don't focus on that, then we're literally just trying to change the dog instead of also changing and allowing, right? Like influencing the behavior and allowing all of the messiness to come up throughout the process. So it's making sure that that's part of the training plan or part of the plan, if you will. And that's not to be left out, because if we leave it out, then we're just then the lens is just on the dog and it's not on what's truly happening for both parties.
Yeah, because it is a relationship. So you have to have your lens on.
You gotta, it's a relationship.
The whole thing.
Well, I want to say thank you to you for exploring this, where this is just like off the cuff, you and I, which is amazing. And I want to say thank you to the culture of Peru and to the people of Peru and to those dogs that like so much joy they brought me on that trip. All of them that were like on the street arguing over resources or whatever it is that they were arguing over, and the ones that stayed with me, like so great in a time of such grief after losing Sully. So thank you to those dogs and for showing me the benefit of allowing, right, and us being able to have this conversation. So
I love it. Thanks for doing this with me.
Thank you.